welcome my partners in crime. Welcome back to Murder Analysed. I'm Christina Moore. Now, before we do anything else, there is a really severe warning about this case. So please be warned right from the beginning, because this case is going to be quite disturbing for many people. The things that I'm going to talk about in this case. But before we get to any of that, right, I just want to say, because I always forget to say it, so I want to say hello to everyone who has subscribed and who hasn't subscribed but who watches all the videos on the channel. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Now, today's case anyway was brought to you by actually one of the viewers of this, and to tell the truth, I answered the message that they left on the comments section, and so now I can't find it. But this case is a Peter Scully case from Australia and the Philippines sort of case, and this viewer, this subscriber, is the one that recommended this, and I will find you at some point and I will name you, so thank you for that too. Also must mention really that my daughter Leanne, she has a friend that works with her, and her name is Louise, and she said I'm not allowed to name your second name Louise, so let me know if you'd like me to. And I'd just like to say hello to her because she's been with me from the beginning. So hello Louise, and thanks for watching. Also for my super thanks and my members, I really appreciate it, and especially Stephen West, who has supported me also from the beginning. It's been a long period, I suppose, over the years of getting to this sort of level now on YouTube, where we're getting more and more subscribers and more people that are commenting. So I do try and answer every one of them, so be patient. But thank you, and thank you for your support to all my members, my partners in crimes behind the scenes, that we do a lot on there. So thanks for your support, I really appreciate it. If you'd like to join my members, please have a look in the links in the description. You can also find them on the main page, and also always have a look at my community page, because a lot of stuff is put on there, especially in these sort of cases where you may seeking help, or you want advice, or you just need someone to talk to. Have a look on there and there'll be information on there for you. So before I forget, please subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, so you know that when my videos come out, I upload on a Monday and a Thursday. Some are short videos, but mostly they're long form videos, most of them. And I assure you, this one today is a long form video, but it is very interesting. I just want to talk to you a little bit about this case before we get really going. The things that are going to be in this video are, and this is why there's a serious warning out with this case, we are going to talk about and highlight crimes against children, sexual offences against children. Now these include trafficking, paid for view on the dark web of obscene and violence, extreme violence against children. It's just shocking, right? This case, that's the only way I can say it. There's rape included in this. There is gang rape. There is torture. There is murder, trafficking, all this sort of stuff in here. And these are on such young children. Some are as young as 18 months old. Now these are mainly the crimes of Peter Scully. Now he is an Australian paedophile monster. Is really, you know, this is really the worst of humanity we're going to talk about here. The worst acts that you can do to someone, right, that will destroy their lives, both physically and psychologically. And in the end, he even murdered some. But also within this, we're going to talk about this dark web, right, and the reason that we're going to talk about the dark web, because this is where this Peter Scully really put his mark. We're also going to include in this video We're going to look at this man called Matthew David Graham. Again, he was an Australian. He was 22 years old at the time when he was arrested. Now, in 2013, Vice called him, or the Hurt to the Core was his dark web site, the most notorious, right, of this hurt core. Now we have hardcore pornography. This is hurt core, right? So it represents really what it says. It was run by this Matthew Graham, who became known as the king of this hurt core, as well as one of the biggest child abusers, sexual abusers, or pornography, or pornographers as it's called in the legal terminology of it. And this hardcore is then distributed for pay to view, right? And this was one of the world's biggest ones. Now he comes into this case mainly because the video that Scully made called Daisy's Destruction was placed on his site as well. And really, this is how the sort of links were made. We're also, though, going to look at a man called Matthew Felders. Now, he's from the UK. Again, another young bloke, educated, that wanted to make his money from what we call cybercrime or online crime like this. A crime called sextortion. And we've done a sextortion case before, and I'll put the link up to that. But it's really serious what's going on out there. So the reason why I'm doing this case is, one, to explain to you what happens on the dark web. Also, when we talk about people like Peter Scully and Matthew Graham and this Matthew Felders, you need to understand the damage and the amount of people and the victims that they can reach. So this case, as I said to you, is very, very serious. It takes in a lot of detail, a lot of laws. It covers different jurisdictions and stuff. So we're going to go all through that. So listen, if you're ready, and you need to be ready for this one. Let's do it. So this case, all of it comes into it. It's shocking, right? Each of these, and we're going to go into detail on this Peter Scully case. We're going to go into a small amount of detail on Matthew Graham's case and a small amount on Matthew Felders' case, because they all highlight the same thing: sex crimes online, which are so hard to detect, but it is £1 billion business, right? So I keep saying to people, when we talk about paedophiles and we talk about these people, it's not just that what motivates them, it is the money as well. And in this case of Peter Scully, that is really, really evident that that was his main focus, apart from he was just a nasty, horrible person right from the really. Some people, you know, are born bad, and I believe that this man was born bad. So Peter Scully at the time of his arrest was 59 years old, right? So he'd had a long life, right, to be a perpetrator and also to do other criminal offences for a very long time. Now, he was born in Australia, in Victoria, Australia, and he grew up in this suburb of Narre Warren in Melbourne, Australia. Now, I've got my cousins, hello, Helen, in Melbourne. So, listen, Melbourne's a lovely country. It's got lovely people in it, right? Australia, it's beautiful. But you're always going to have these sorts of people in our society, you know, hiding under the radar. Now, there ain't much really, I'll tell you now, about his childhood, right? There isn't. I know he has a sister because she comes up later on in the case, and I'll point her out later. But there's not really much known about him. He did say at one point, only after he was arrested in 2015, that he had been abused by a priest. But he's never ever said anything like that before. But this boy was showing signs of, at a very young age, of being a manipulator, a fraudster, really, because that's really what he was known for before, prior to 2011. Really, that's what he was. So when he was growing up in this Melbourne, in this suburb of Melbourne, his parents, I think the only thing they've sort of said about him was he wasn't really in as a child, he was always out. Listen, most kids are out. But you've got to think with this man, because he was so manipulative even at a young age, and that's proven really by what people have said and he said about that he used to sort of sell things or do things to kids, you know, sort of manipulate them to take in their money and then buying drugs. So he was already this way inclined, right, I suppose, to be this sort of person that manipulated his way through life. Now, there's not really, as I said, there's not really much about him at all, but if his parents have said, yeah, that he was always out and he was sort of a lone person, they've actually said, other people have actually said that he found it difficult to have relationships with girls at adolescent age. I mean, listen, some people are just like that. But I think this man's arrogant, narcissistic, and, well, his whole personality, even if you watch him now, you'll see that that wouldn't have even changed. That isn't something that grows. This is something that I think he's had since he was quite young. And was he abused? He's never ever said it before. There was never anything that come out. I think it was really an excuse to try and say why he did his crimes he did, or that should be part of it. You know, it happened to me, so you can't blame me, sort of thing. When that didn't really work, he sort of then said, well, I was just a passive sort of person in these crimes. Well, when I tell you the story about this man, you'll know he wasn't no passive, you know, observer in these sort of crimes. So I think from his childhood to when he was arrested in 2015, I think he was always like that. Always like that. He always wanted money, but he didn't really want to earn it. He wanted this lifestyle that he thought he could get from other people's money who had worked hard for their money. They really had. And he was in a lot of schemes and stuff like this in Australia that were fraudulent schemes to take money off of very innocent people, and quite large sums of money, to tell the truth. So his criminal behaviour, I think, yes, started when he was young, little bits, but it expanded to where this man just had no care for anybody at all. So before fleeing to Manila in 2011 and leaving his wife and his children, he just left them. I think things were getting on top of him then. Now, we don't know at that time whether he was a paedophile or not, right? There's no evidence of that as such. But as I say, with many, many paedophiles, especially like this man, you wouldn't know, right? You wouldn't know. So before he fled because of his involvement in this property scheme that costed investors $2.68 million of their hard-earned money. Now, and this is when he comes out with about the sexual abuse, to even try and get off of that sort of crime, right? But he didn't stand and stay in the country and fight this crime, these charges. He fled, right? He fled. But prior to leaving Melbourne, he'd left his wife and his children. I don't think they understood why at the time, to tell you the truth. Plus, though, he'd already set up this escort agency, which was with his Filipino partner. She was a sex worker, and she comes into this case a lot further down the line, and she's a piece of work herself. But this girl was already trafficked, right, at the age of 14, into the sex trade, right? This is where the sex trafficking comes into it as well, but it comes into it much more later on down the line. So she was used to this world of being abused, right? She'd been brought up with it. He met her, they moved in together. She gave him a life that he may have known about before, the dark web and everything else, but I don't think he realised until he met her how much money you could make out of doing this sort of crime. Because he could no longer get away with all his other things, you know, these schemes that he could get away with before. But once the Australian government was on him, right, the financial services were on him, they wanted this money because he's now fraudulent. So him and this girl then moved to the Philippines in 2011 to escape all that. So he already had interest in this sex industry then, but it was, or so we know, it was more classed as adult, right? Because he was using her as a sex worker, plus they were doing videos and everything else. But when he moved to the Philippines, to Manila, it all changed. It all changed because I think he saw potential, right? Monetary potential in what he could do there. Plus the areas that they went and looked for these kids to abuse in Manila. And of course she's helped him, and so have others, women and men helped him sort of start this business, right? Which is worth, I'm telling you, absolutely millions or billions of money within this dark web. He realised that he could have his fetish of pain and torture that he liked to do, and rape of children and everything else, and get away with it, and on the other hand make loads of money. And that's really what happened from 2011 to 2015. He was getting away with the most heinous crimes against children. So he moved to this, I think it was Mindanao, I think. I'll put them up, the maps. And also some pictures of this place in the Philippines. It's beautiful, and the Philippine people are beautiful people, right? As I said, there is a lot of poverty there. And these sort of predators like this abuse that. They abuse that. These people don't know their children are being abused. They're not giving up their children to be abused. But this man understood that really it was so lucrative, right? And he took it to such a level, this, it was international, right? Because it's on the dark web, it's international. And he started making these videos and doing all this stuff to children, and selling these videos and putting the girlfriends and the friends in it, and, you know, and then of course when we talk about and when we look at this hurt core, which is part of that, it's that people not only can watch these images, they can be videoed, live video stream coming through, and they can tell you what they want you to do to these children, right? This is what this is all about, really. And these children, and the youngest one was 18 months that we know of, right, was abused like that. So as these live streams are not only going out, but they're also being recorded, right? So yes, you pay to view, or you then the videos are sold separately, and this is where other people then start to pick these videos up. Other hurtcore, like, you know, Matthew Graham and stuff, want these videos because they know they generate money. Now, when Scully started to put up these videos, and one of them is called Daisy's Destruction, which is the most notorious actually of the videos, and that is the one that it does show this 18-month-old baby being severely hurt and tortured and abused. It's then sold for around, I think, 10,000 US dollars, around £6,000 per view. So, you know, think about that for a minute, right? And these are watched by millions of people, by millions, because the worse it is, the more pain that they inflict, the more they're allowed, you know, the people that are typing in what I want you to do, they're doing, the more that's worth money. So there were terrible ordeals these kids had to go through. So what they would do, him and his accomplices, and I'll put them up in a minute, the two women, that's mainly the one that he lived with and this other one, but also there's some other men involved. You know, it's easy to get people, isn't it, to do things, I think, if they're that way inclined. But Scully liked to take control, right? So this is where, when he claims that he was only a, you know, not a participant in it, but he sort of didn't have much to do with it. it's all bullshit, right, really, because he is such a narcissist, and he wants to be in control of everything. So he wouldn't only participate in some of these movies, but or separate ones from a few, the major ones, but he would produce them, right? He would be there talking in the background, telling these girls what to do with these kids, or men what to do with these kids. That's what he would do. He enjoyed it, right? Once it was off camera, he done a lot more to these children than what he actually put on camera. Now off camera though, he thought he was safe, right? But he was talking, he was directing, and that was coming through on the video, right? It's like me talking to you now. So the police then knew something, because as these videos were going out on the dark web, it's hard for police to track, right? And believe it, there's agencies from all over the world tracking these sorts of predators daily. Every minute there's one, there's so many of them. But when you have a video that's come out like Daisy's Distraction, which is so damaging to these children, actually some, when they first saw it, didn't believe it was real, right? It was so disturbing. But as they realised, hang on a minute, this is real, a lot of them cried. Now these are seasoned people that's worked in this industry for a long while and understand what's going on out there. The trauma for these children, and the trauma of the people, the normal, ordinary people that have to watch this shit, right, to try and catch who's in there. And I've said this before when we have these videos that come out on the dark web, which are so extreme, so violent, you know, even down to murder happens on live streams, all right? These police officers all over the world, these task force, have to watch to find some signs of, one, the perpetrator, two, the child being abused, right, or being murdered. They have to find something within that video that's going to lead them in the direction to try and find something out. Because even though this may have got, this is all over the world now on the dark web, they have to find why and where it's coming from, because the encryptions these people use are so good. They're looking for the minutest thing that they can think, okay, it could come from this country, it could come from this country. On the video, he sounded Dutch, right? Peter Scully sounded Dutch. So it went to the Dutch task force over there because they really believed he was Dutch. But because his accent was so strong, Australian accent, it was one of the Dutch police that said, he's not Dutch, he's Australian. Now they've got some lead. Now a lot of Australians do then go to the Philippines as this sex trafficking thing happening and sex tourism, and we spoke about this before, happens. From Australia to the Philippines is not far at all. And it's a nice place to live if you're a nice person. But if you are a paedophile and a predator like this sort of area would be on your radar, right? To set up, especially when you have a girlfriend that you've met in Australia and you know that she's into this sort of stuff, comes from the Philippines, and so that's where then he's moved to, and this is how they found him really, and this is where this Matthew Graham comes into it, because he used this video, or one of these videos, on his site, right? So now we're having a video that's a pay to view video, right, on the dark web, that millions of people are now watching and sharing out and following and all this sort of stuff, but also paying for it. So it's so difficult, as I said, to the police or these task force to uncrypt or decrypt what the encryptions that are set on these sites, because as they start to unravel one, there's new technology comes out which helps them hide it. So they've got to continually upgrade the skills, upgrade everything to try and catch these sort of criminals. It's a very difficult task, and so that's why it's so important that you understand the dangers of what is going out there online, and that's what cybercrime is really all about. in this area, in the area that I specialise in, is this. Not your securities, because you have a lot of people that go into cyber securities, make a lot of money. This is cybercrime, right? Offences against children and women and men, right? All ages, online. This is what it's about. And a lot of you are going to say, how did he get hold of these children? Most of these children, most of these people, when you go to the Philippines, are so lovely people. You have rich people go in there, and not all of them, right, are paedophiles. They're not, right? They're not. There's lots of people. I've been to the Philippines, beautiful country. They're beautiful people, right? But they're trusting. They are very trusting. So when you have people come in, and they're not only grooming you and your children, you know, they're grooming everyone, right? The whole society thinks these people are great, not just you. They're giving you food, and they're giving you education, and they're giving you this and that and the other. But their whole desire is to get their hands on your children. So these whole people, whole towns, societies are groomed. Plus though, when you have someone that has women working for them, right? Because don't forget, a lot of these children, if they couldn't be groomed to get, or the families didn't trust them enough, right? Because not all families did, they would then be abducted. So that we have kidnap here as well in this case. And they would be taken and tortured, abused, filmed, sent out, and all this stuff, and some were even murdered. It's just awful. So when we talk about the grooming process, this is what I'm saying to you, it's a grooming process. These people are very good at what they do. They are manipulators. They understand what it is you may need to allow you to trust them. But if you don't, and they want your child, they're probably going to take it anyway. They really are. This man would have took any child that he thought would have made him money. He would have. I think the one that was trafficked was the Margello one, Liza Margello, and she was with him in Melbourne, and that she came to the Philippines in 2011. She was already trafficked anyway to Australia. Then she came back to the Philippines with him, living her life of luxury as she was getting him children, also acting and in these videos, right, to make money. Well, not acting because it's real life, right? It's not even acting, is it? She was doing what she had been taught to do from a very early age because she was trafficked herself. Not that that makes any difference at all, right? It doesn't, because she should have known better the pain and anguish that that would have caused them children. But she did, and she also got these children for him so that he could abuse and sell and distribute the images and the disgusting stuff that he did to these children. He also had this other woman with him, Karma and Elzera. She was with him, and then there was another one, which was an acquaintance, was this Dorothea China, right? Anyway, whatever her name is, they're up there, right? I'm no good with names. Oh my God, these women were a bloody disgrace, right? I'm telling you now, bloody disgrace. This Dorothea, she's the one that's into this online sex trafficking, right? So she would get the children, she would take them somewhere, have them abused, and live stream out on a webcam out to these sites for him. Plus she would also bring him children for his own videos, right? This is a massive thing. The other two also did the same thing, but they mainly got the children and also abused these children as well in these videos. They did. Shocking, right? Absolutely disgusting people, these people, to do what they did to children. Now, this Margello, she, after sort of, even he was arrested, she hadn't been arrested yet, and he was still continuing this sort of thing from prison. She had her online Facebook site and everything she had showing her lifestyle, right? Her multi-million-pound lifestyle, what she had gained from this, showing how great it was and how good she looked and stuff. She was abusing children, and the money was like blood money that she was using. to do that. So when you see, and some people have put photos up about her and stuff like that, I've only put 1 or 2 up about her, one in her mask that she used to try and hide herself online as she's abusing an 18-month-old child, right? Didn't save her at all from getting prosecuted, did it? Because really, this is what I'm saying. This Scully said, I wasn't really an active participant. It was all them. He's not even loyal. But the thing is, when you're looking at years and years in prison, you're actually going to say. And I don't think she said a lot. But the other one that I think Karma, she did. She actually said certain things. But listen, she didn't say it out of remorse, right? Or guilt for what she's done. She said it to get a lesser sentence. Meaning, we all know it. Because if you had any morals and you had any empathy for these children that you've done this to, especially, and I'll tell you about her in a minute, what she witnessed and didn't do anything about until after she had been caught, you know, you would have come forward a long time before that. These people are just disgraceful. They're disgusting. So listen, let's talk about this film, this video, this Daisy's destruction. So Scully's website on the dark web was called No Limits Fun, right? Or NLF for short. And the most notorious, as I said, video that he produced and made was this Daisy's destruction, and which he sold to clients for up to $10,000 or around £6,000, as I've said before. Showing you the potential here of the money, or the motivation for money, of one of the reasons why he did it. Not the only reason, but one of the bigger reasons, I think. He said it was sold around the world to many hundreds of thousands of people, right, around the world, and also distributed to other sites. Now, it featured the torture and rape of 3 girls, right, including an 18-month-old child, by Scully and 2 of these Filipino women. So he was involved in this one because he couldn't keep his hands off it. He had to be involved because he enjoyed it so much. So yes, motivation for money was one thing, but also that power and control over someone else, like a child, was more enticing to him than he didn't even think by wearing these masks that he could get caught. Any of these people didn't. This is probably the worst crime ever, I think, when we look at these crimes against children on the internet, really. As the filming continued, Scully would urge and persist that the abuse got worse and the things that were done to these children got worse. One by his girlfriend, and at the time she was then 19, and this was this Margella, and they enjoyed themselves, right? So prior to the video gaining attention by the general public, Scully broadcast this Daisy's destruction privately on this pay-per-view basis. So he done pay-to-view first, right? So it's like a private client's room, really. And then as he knew it was getting quite a lot of, he then released and sold then to others in the industry that then also put that out, then he would take a cut of that. Listen, I don't know how else to say it, but when we talk about cyber crimes against children like this, right, the motivation here on the larger scale of people is money. They are just used and abused to make other people money. And these are the most vulnerable in all our societies, aren't they? Children. So I don't know if you know about the Dutch police. Now the Dutch National Child Exploration team, they are really good, and I've done a case on sextortion before, and they were involved in that because a lot of these crimes usually come from that area, right? European, right? So they, as I said, they heard this voice, the Australians, people noticed this crime, this video, for the fact that it was so bad, right? And as these task force then became more interested in it, because one, when they found that it was actually real, right? They really started to look into it, and this is when they found that he wasn't Dutch at all, he was Australian. So he was tracked down. From that, they then know, they look at who's entering Australia, they sort of look at other things in that video that can give him some idea. They could have been wrong, it may not have been him. But they did then follow him and sort of look at him in a different light once they believed it could have been him in this video, right? And this was by his voice, to tell the truth. And also the people that he was hanging around with, these girls, because it was girls within this video that, as I said, you can see it just had the masks on. Not really a great disguise. Also, by the way they talk, all this sort of thing is really researched, really analysed within this video to try and give the police as much way of getting these perpetrators as they possibly can, right? They need the most tiniest little bit of evidence is enough sometimes. Because I said, getting through that, you know, encryptions is difficult. They need to get these people in real life, because sometimes they can't get them on the dark web because of the encryption. Do you see what I mean? Sometimes it's easier to get them in real life. And this is what they decided to do. So on the 20th of February 2015, Scully was tracked to this like Philippine little city. It's like north of Manila. Right, it's a little city, and I should put it up there for you. And they had the police had 6 warrants then for his arrest, all relating to the abduction and sexual abuse of these 2 cousins. So there we had, the movie is one thing, we had abduction and the sexual abuse of these cousins. But then we had all this then sort of broke open, right? Because as I said, he had people that were kidnapping, you know, abducting children. Some of them relatives, you know, relatives, some of them come home, some of them did not, right? So while they were searching for Scully in the Philippines, investigation tracked down 3 victims of this Daisy destruction video. One, by the look of the children, things the perpetrators hid their face. They didn't really hide the faces of the children. So Lisa, this victim 1, we'll call her, was found alive, as was Daisy 2, what we call Daisy 2, victim 2 within this recording. But she had terrible, long-lasting injuries, physical injuries. And they were caused by the severity of the torture and pain inflicted on this girl, really, in her mistreatment within this video that caused her to have long-lasting physical, not just psychological, but physical damage. Now, according to this, the girlfriend, Margello, Scully recorded himself in the video with Cindy, now Cindy is victim 3, in which he had raped her, and there's a picture of Cindy up there, and tortured her, and then made her dig her own grave before strangling her to death with a rope. I mean, you have to take a minute, don't you, with this. So this is, now we know what's in Daisy's Destruction. That's why it's called Daisy's Destruction. Because little Cindy, right, this very young girl, you'll see a picture of her. You'll see a picture of her bones, actually. They've dug her up from under there. He wanted to take a life as well as do everything else. And this was all about making this money. And this is why this Daisy's Destruction video was so terrible, right? But so, you know, a necessity, I think, in a way, for the police to have to watch it to find this man. Because this this is what we know about, all right, with this man. This is what we know about. There's a lot we don't, to tell the truth. There's a lot we don't. And believe it, like every other paedophile and predator like this, he's a bloody liar. He is. So you're only going to get what you get with him. There's never going to be the whole truth. Nothing. But it was when people come forward like her to try and save herself, and the other one tried to save herself. She actually showed, I think the other one, where the body was buried of Cindy, right? This very young girl that, believe me, had a terrible, terrible death. And then after you've been abused and abused so much, he made her dig her own grave, knowing, she knew that she was going to die that day, this very, very young child. When I do these cases, and I sometimes think to myself, how depraved, right? How can one human being do this to another human being? I don't know. I don't know. And that I cannot find, there is no, you can say, oh yes, he's this, he's that. No, he's just a monster, right? And there is nothing that would have ever changed this man from what he was. There's no way this man's going to get any help in prison. You couldn't help this man. There's no reform, no helping this man at all. All the women that work with him within this, all the other perpetrators that were with him, anyone that brought this video for the $10,000 or £6,000 ago, right? There's no helping these sorts of people stop doing what they're doing. So we are the ones that have to be so focused on making sure that our children do not become victims of these sort of perpetrators. So this is where this David Graham comes into it. Because of course, he was the leading, right, dark web channel on this sort of stuff, right? He wanted this video. He wanted it because he wanted his clients, and the many, many of them, to come to his site and buy this as well, this video as well, right? Because everyone wanted to make money out of these children's hurt and anguish and pain, right? Torture, rape and murder. Everyone wanted to make money. Everyone. So he couldn't be left out. This was his downfall as well. I'll tell you now, it was. Because this man, he was 22-year-old, and he ran a series, right, of this hardcore child sexual abuse site. The more pain, the better. Because he knew the more pain, the more torture, the more torment these kids were under, the more these perverted people would pay for it. Oh, he was this leading man in his field, right? He was. He was just a disgrace, really, to his family and to his country, the same as this Scully was. They're a disgrace to society, I think. Anyone who has anything to do with these people, whether you purchase their stuff or even know them in a way, is a disgrace. These people, right, only want to use and abuse these children for money. For money. Now this man was only 22, but he sold it, and that was his down, really what took him down as well. This video, right? That was his downfall. And his name, his online name was Lux, right? So that's a case coming up on MA. Don't think it's not, it is. And Scully is bad, and this one is just as bad, really. So I think police knew, right, that this was all going on in the Philippines. They knew that Scully couldn't have done it himself. They knew that. And so they've arrested him, and he's been charged. And I'll tell you now, they was all charged, and they all went to prison. As I said, the one that said where they buried the body of the young little Cindy out of this show, out of this video, she got less a sentence, but they all got like life, right? So then Scully goes to prison in the Philippines. But he's Australian, isn't he? Right? Now, I've lived in Australia, and Australia is a great place to live, and as I said, and if you're an Australian citizen and everything else, you are protected under the law even if you're abroad, right? So Scully then claims legal aid from Australia. So now we have a perpetrator that's left Australia under really, conditions that he shouldn't have, because he was on the run really, because of what he'd ripped off normal Australian people of 2.6 something million, right? Then he had also run illegal stuff in Melbourne. So he went to the Philippines in 2011. So from 2011 to 2015, he done this, right? 2015, he was caught. 2018, he was then sentenced. They wanted to give him the death sentence. Believe it, they wanted to give him all the death sentence. But in 2006, you see, in the Philippines, that had been abolished. So they didn't. There was on a rare occasion, I think, in the Philippines, that was brought back. I think it was 2011. There was some big drug cartel stuff that was going on there, and I think it was brought back, the death penalty for them, and they tried to reintroduce the death penalty for Peter Scully and his associates, but unfortunately that didn't happen, right? But in the meantime, you had Scully then in court going through the court process, which would have been extreme, right? Because we've got now different jurisdictions, different countries all involved in this, because we're talking about cyber crime as well as crime that's done on national soil, right? On Filipino soil. So it's a big case, and it would have cost quite a lot of money. It ended up costing the people of Australia about $525,000 to give this man a legal defence, right? Because he certainly wasn't going to pay for it, was he? Because they couldn't find any of his money. He definitely had assets and stuff, but nothing that they could take and use. So it was really an issue. And the Attorney General at the time, who'd just come in actually, as the Attorney General, said this wasn't acceptable, but there was nothing that they could do because it was already in law, right? That this was how it worked. If you were prosecuted or charged with a crime in a different country and you as an Australian citizen, that you would get legal aid, or you could claim for legal aid. That has since changed in 2018, I think, 2019. There was changes, so I've put it up there, to that system, because no one agrees that you should fund for someone like a paedophile where there's so much evidence against these people, that the crimes that he'd not only done in Australia but also what he'd done in the Philippines. They didn't want to do that. There should be limits. So it has changed now, but at the time, no. Peter Scully's legal aid was paid for by the Australians themselves, right? It was. But let's talk about now his personality as we see him, as now he's in a Filipino prison. Listen, no prison is a hotel, right? Not for these sorts of criminals, it's certainly not. No prison should be classed as a hotel. But you see, Peter Scully, and this is where his sister comes in. Yes, I know he's got a sister, because his background's kept very quiet. And that mainly, maybe, to protect his wife and his children, right? Who left him way before this. Good for them. But we know he has a sister, because when he was in prison, in a Filipino prison, waiting to be sentenced and everything else, he had so many complaints, you wouldn't believe it. He didn't like the food. He didn't like the conditions. He wanted this, that and the other. A pound of beef, a pound of this, He wanted a mobile phone. He wanted this, that and the other. He wanted it all, right? He wanted it all. And I think one of his lawyers had said, or ex-lawyers, who literally in the end couldn't represent him because he couldn't stand the bloody man, right? So even he withdrew his services from there. And he said actually about, not anything about the case, but about his attitude towards this. He felt he had the right to be treated like a king even in there. The best food, the best sleeping. No, you're a prisoner, right? In a Filipino jail with other Filipinos and other foreign nationals who've gone to that country and committed crimes. There's no difference. But he thought he was different. He thought he was protected. So there was loads of evidence against this man, right? Loads. Now don't forget, he's asked for a mobile phone. Doesn't say whether he was given one, but he would have had access. I'll tell you that now. Because his lawyer, he wanted to continue to see his lawyer about once a week. He was constantly wanting to see the lawyers. That's why a lot of them got rid of him, because they couldn't stand him. And listen, it's a nowhere case, right? The evidence against this man was bloody overwhelming. And it's difficult, you know, for your reputation, actually, I suppose, in a way, to represent such a criminal like this. A lot of people would have refused, right? Especially when you don't think there's that much, you know, it's not going to bring you much, is it, in the way of your, you know, career to represent someone of this extreme nature like this and the people that he was with. So I can see why a lot of lawyers wouldn't go near it. I can also see, after reading the statement from that lawyer who said, I just withdraw my services, because of the pressure from this man, because he was such a narcissist and he wanted everything his way. So yes, I do believe that one way or another, this man would have had a mobile phone in there, and this is how they believe that he continued doing his business, because don't forget, his girlfriends and that were out at the time when he was first arrested for quite a while the evidence was coming in. So that's how this sort of continued, and he still continued to make money. Plus, the other thing what happened there was, as they were gathering all this evidence, it was stored in one place, right? No one knew where it was, and especially the video of this, Daisy's destruction and all the other stuff around that. It was destroyed in a fire. And it is believed, and it's only an allegation, right, because there's no proof, it is believed that Peter Scully himself bribed one of the police or the guards within the prison to burn the place down. But that didn't save him, because a lot of backups have been made and different stuff have been made. But yeah, it could have really hindered that case, but luckily it didn't. So we're talking about a man here that has most of his life, really from a child, as he was, you know, trying to swindle people out of money from a very young age. Bit of a loner, and couldn't get girlfriends. That's what we've sort of the only things you can really find out about him at a very young age. Then goes on though to marry, have 2 children, and for a few years lead quite a normal life. And you'll find that with a lot of these perpetrators, that they try to have this illusion, but give this illusion of this happy family and everything else. But this man behind the scenes, you see, couldn't put up that facade for long, I don't think. He is too narcissistic to put up this facade. It broke down in the end, and he just literally one day walked out on his wife and children, and then moved in with this girlfriend who was very young at the time, and who had also been trafficked as part of her history, sex trafficked. So that's when he got her, or she got him, whoever got each other into it, started this. So in 2011, it all came out about, you know, these schemes for real estate schemes where he'd ripped off people's money, and that's when he fled to the Philippines, to Manila. And, you know, shocking, isn't it, really, when you think he couldn't have got away with his crimes in Australia. He could have for a while, right? He could have for a while. We would have been caught a lot sooner, especially on this, because that Matthew Graham, he was Australian, but they get you in the end, right? In the Philippines, I think he felt that he could get away with it even easier, and also that he could manipulate people more because they were more vulnerable and more open, I suppose, to being groomed, right, as families and societies by his money. I think that's what he thought. And because it was backed up, I suppose, by his girlfriend who was Filipino and stuff, that he looks quite, I suppose, reasonable to them and trustworthy, you know. And as I say, these people are very, very good, aren't they, in what they do. But with him, I don't know. There's not, you know, when you look at this case, it's so extreme, right? It's the whole world, when we look at cyber, right, is massive. The dark web is massive, and there is a book, and I'll put this book up, A girl wrote this book, I can't remember her name now, but it's on there, I'll show you it. And you know, when you've got to think of these people that use online to abuse your children, right? Or they use in the physical world to abduct and take these children. The two young kids are cousins that were abused by Scully. I think it was her mother and a police officer actually that really broke this case with that side of it. Didn't give up, right? They didn't give up. There's always people, you know, fighting on the right side of the law when it comes to these sort of crimes. Many agencies across the world, you'll see them in task force, I'll put them up, that fight to protect the innocent from crimes like this. But sometimes it's just too much. The technology to get through is so difficult, it can take years. And as we then get technology that counteracts their technology, they get new technology that again encodes it and decrypts it, so we just can't get in. But I always say when we do these cases that it's about our safety of our children is in our hands, because the internet really is here, isn't it? In our houses, in our homes. We can't do much if a perpetrator abducts a child from us, right? You can't, right? Because you can't be with your child 24/7. But you see, a perpetrator can be in your home 24/7 if it's through the internet, can't they? It's 24/7. There is no barriers for it. So we must explain to our children, especially when we're talking about things like trafficking and sextortion online. It's so severe, right? It's such a big issue at the minute because these people lie, right? And I say this all the time. People lie on the internet about who they are. I think that Matthew Fields, whatever his name is, he had 50 different IDs and 50 different profiles online, and he went for men, women and children, right? No, he actually didn't touch them at all. No physical contact at all. So when we look at these sort of crimes where you can manipulate people to do things for you because they've, I say, dropped their barriers because they're young and they're online, and you think you've got a girl texting you saying, show me your bits, do this, do that. These youngsters do it, right? They do it. But behind that webcam is not a nice young girl, 14, 13. It might be a 60-year-old man that's pretending to be a young girl. And as he is filming you performing for this young girl, you're being streamed worldwide. You're being recorded. And he is probably masturbating to himself, watching you do what you're doing. That's why it's called sextortion, because they want you to do sex acts and then extort you, right? So they will then say to you, well, I filmed you. Then they reveal they're not who they say they first was. They are the 60-year-old man. And now they want you to do more acts and more acts and more acts until they get you in a position where you would do anything for fear that they are going to release the material that you've done. My answer to this, and especially when we look at all these cases, when we go through the next two cases, is that you should never be fearful. We live in a world, right, that understands about online crime. So if you are a victim of any of these sort of crimes, whether it's sextortion, whether it's this hurt call, whether you've been trafficked, as long as you just remain a victim and try and leave there, report it, do something, you will be helped. But a lot of these people have to, or think they have to, cross the line, right? And then become perpetrators themselves. Because they're trying to save the material about them being released out. Then you become a perpetrator. And then you're no different from the person then that started all this. Don't be afraid of anyone. If you have done some act, and I'm talking maybe to very young adolescents, you know, who do this, or some are men, believe it, when we go into these cases, these next two, you will see how bad this can get. You need to speak to parents. And I keep saying this, you need to be open about sex. You need to be open about what's going on the internet. You need to be open with your children. You can't restrict a phone from a child because they're just going to go and do it behind your back. If you are open in your conversations with your children, if you explain to them what's going on the internet, that not everyone behind them screens is who they say they are, right? And they should automatically want to come to you and say, this person's asked me to do this. They've asked me to do that. Or I've done that, right? I did it, Mum, I'm stupid, I've done it. Then your answer should be, but don't worry. Don't worry. Because once you know, right? And once they know that it doesn't matter, right? That, yes, and believe it, these people will release this material out because it makes money. They don't give a shit about anybody, right? They will release it. But you can get over that. Anyone can get over that. But it's when you step over that line. And in these cases, the minute you've stepped over that line, you're going to get deeper and deeper into this online dark web stuff. And it's that reason why I do these videos, to highlight not only about the cases like Peter Scully and Graham Matthews, or Matthew Graham, but also about these other cases and these other paedophiles and these other people on the dark web who are going to manipulate and use people to make money and extort them, right? It is really, really important that you understand how bad cybercrime really is. And to tell you the truth, it's not getting any better because there's so much money to be made out there. The technology is out there now to make it easier to do what they do, right? It really is. So listen, I hope you've enjoyed this case. Peter Scully, in the end, right, he got life without parole in a Filipino jail in 2018, and in 2022 he got an extra 129 years to serve in prison. The man is never getting out. The girlfriend, the Morello, her girl, she got life, and then I think she got 126 years on top of that. The others got life sentences without parole. And believe me, in these prisons, they will be, no matter how much Peter Scully and his sister whinge about the conditions in these prisons, he is in exactly the exact place that this man needs to be, right? And I'm glad, actually, in this case, that they didn't do the death sentence for him. They didn't bring it back, because this man needs to suffer. They all need to suffer, like they made them children suffer. So I am grateful to all the police forces, all the different task forces all around the world that have worked so hard and tirelessly to catch these sort of predators. And may they spend the rest of their life in prison suffering for it, right? So people like Peter Scully have gone, but there's hundreds more just like him. So thank you for watching this case on Peter Scully, this terrible man and his accomplices. And also, as I say, we've touched on, haven't we, Matthew Fowders, and also on Matthew Graham, and both these cases will be coming up soon on MA. And again, both of them cases are disturbing cases in their own right, in their own right. So please, protect yourself, protect your children, be careful online, make sure all your protections are in place, and talk to your kids. So until the next time, bye-bye for now.